In this video, I want to show you one of my home projects. So this is my patio project. So this picture here is actually a picture of my house with a patio being put in. So this is kind of midway through the process here. We have the stone down, everything's dug out. It's just now we're waiting to get the concrete poured. So what I want to know is how much is it going to cost for the concrete? So it's going to be a big concrete patio. So you can kind of see I have a unique shape. It's kind of like an L shape here. It goes back. But what's important is to realize that this is actually a volume question, because when you think patio, you might be thinking, oh, it's just flat on the ground. But when we're talking about concrete, there's a thickness to it. Concrete typically gets poured 4 inches thick, so that actually is going to be the height. So this is really going to be the base, and then it's going to get poured 4 inches thick, which is going to be the height. So let me move this down so you can see a better picture here. So I created this picture with the dimensions of this shape. So this is kind of like an aerial view looking down at the shape of the patio. And then what you have to remember that you don't see in this picture, because this is two-dimensional, you have to remember that this is actually going to be coming up off of the page at 4 inches thick. Some other things to consider here is the cost for the concrete. So how much does the concrete cost? So if you look up typical cost for concrete, $90 per cubic yard. What's interesting about this is notice that it's measured in cubic yards. Hopefully right away when you see cubic, you're thinking volume. Remember, volume is cubic units. If I was talking about area, it would be measured in square units. So since it's telling me cubic yards, that means it's a volume. So I need to figure out the volume in cubic yards. And then I'll be able to figure out the cost from there. The delivery charge, this is something that we'll consider at the end. This is just a flat fee, so one-time fee of $60. So we'll just add that into our final cost. What we really need to worry about is how many cubic yards is my patio going to be? How much space is it going to take up in cubic yards so that I can multiply that by the $90 per cubic yard. So the problem is when you look at the dimensions, I have the measurements here are in feet, which is very common to measure a patio dimensions in feet. And then the height is measured in inches, 4 inches. That's how thick. So right now I have 3 different units. I have inches, I have feet, and I have yards. So that tells me I'm going to have to do some conversions. So my first thought here is let's get everything into feet. So when I find my volume, I find it in feet. I find it in cubic feet. Since most of my dimensions are already in feet. So for 4 inches, if I want to get that over to feet, well, 4 inches, so I think about 4 inches, I want to cancel out the inches. So I'm going to put 1 foot on top and 12 inches on the bottom so that my inches cancel here. So then this really becomes 4 divided by 12 feet, which is also 1/3 of a foot. Now, some of you, I feel like with that, you'll just know, just divide that by 12, and that's how many feet you'll have. The feet should be getting smaller, right? Because 4 inches, your number for your feet should be smaller because of 1 foot is 12 inches. So you can do that. You could set up a proportion, up to you. So you just have to get the 1/3 of a foot. So then in terms of finding the volume, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of think of this as a prism. It's a unique shape. It's like an L-shaped prism because I'm going to think about this as my base, the whole thing, and then I'm going to multiply it by the height. So this is going to be my height. So in order to find the area of this base, I have to break it up into 2 figures. You could do like one rectangle and then subtract off this piece that we don't want. I think it's easier just to break it up as so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pretend there's an imaginary line here. And I'm going to have this be the first rectangle that I find the area of, and this will be my second rectangle I find the area of. And then if I find the area of those 2 rectangles and add them together, that's going to be the area of my base. And then to find the volume, I just have to multiply that by the height. Think about like a general prism. The volume is capital B, so the area of the base times height. That's exactly what I'm going to do here. So my first step is going to be find the volume of the concrete, which is going to be find the area of these two bases, add them together times the height. So the area of this base, length times width, it's just a rectangle. I have 20.5 feet, and I need to know what this dimension is. So this dimension right here is the same as down here. This is all rectangular. So if this whole thing is 20 across, 20 feet across, if this is 10, well, so is this. So that means that this would also have to be 10 feet. So my area here is going to be 10 feet times the 20.5 feet. So this is going to give me 205 square feet because we're talking area, so square feet. And then the area of this base, length times width, is going to be 10 times 16.5. So this is going to be 165 square feet. So now the area of this total base, or the area of the top of the patio here, is going to be 205 plus the 165. So when I add those together, my capital B, or the area of the base, is going to be 370. So 370 feet squared times the height of my patio. Well, that's 1/3 of a foot. And now when we multiply those together, we get, I'm going to leave this as a fraction because I want to keep everything exact. So 370 over 3 cubic feet. So that's how many cubic feet of concrete I need. That doesn't help me figure out the cost though, because I need to know what is the cost. I need to know how many cubic yards. So because I know it's $90 per cubic yard. So now what we need to do is we need to do a conversion here. So what we need to do is we need to convert to cubic yards. So most people don't know the conversion for feet to cubic yards offhand, right? That's one of the things. I mean, unless you do construction and you're doing concrete work all the time, then you might know it offhand. But for what we usually know is we know how many feet are in a yard. So if I know that, so if I know that there's 1 yard, so think about a yardstick, that's equal to 3 feet. If I want to know how many cubic yards equal, or how many cubic feet equals 1 cubic yard, what I do is I just cube this. So think about this as if I cube this and I cube this, what ends up happening is 1 cubed is 1, yards cubed is yards cubed, and then 3 cubed is 27, feet cubed is going to be feet cubed. So here's my conversion. So by knowing that 1 yard is equal to 3 feet, 1 cubic yard is equal to 27 cubic feet. So now when I go to do my conversion, I can use this unit analysis like I did up here with feet, or I can do a proportion. So it doesn't matter how you set this up. It's whatever you think's easier. So I know that I have, so let me write my conversion factor. So I know I have 1 cubic yard over 27 cubic feet is equal to X cubic yards. I'm going to keep my units across the top the same, over 370 divided by 3 cubic feet. So this is using the proportion. Or if I want to use unit analysis, I can say, well, I have 370 divided by 3 cubic feet. I want to get rid of the feet, so I'm going to put my feet on the bottom and the 1 cubic yard on top. So then I cancel those and I just multiply that through. You can get your answer that way, or you can cross multiply and solve this proportion. So it doesn't matter, it's just whatever you think's easier. So I'm going to just go through and solve this proportion. So 27x equals 370 over 3. Divide both sides by 27. And that's exactly what I'm doing here if I multiply this across. I'm doing 370 divided by 3 over 1 times 1 over 27. I'm doing the same exact calculation. So I'm getting 4.5679 cubic yards. Same thing over here. So again, it's just kind of personal preference. And I honestly, for me, I'll switch it up. Sometimes I like proportions. Biggest thing is remember proportions, your units stay across, they're the same on the numerator as they are in the denominator, versus the unit analysis here, you're removing the unit. So you're, whatever you're trying to get rid of is what goes on the bottom, so you can divide it out. So this is my amount of concrete needed. Now it doesn't seem very big because it's just 4.567, but it's in cubic yards, so that's why it got smaller. So here is the amount of concrete needed for the job. Now to figure out my costs, so my last step here, well, the cost is going to be $90 times the 4.5679. So $90 times the amount of concrete, 4.5679 cubic yards. So that equals $411.11. So that's the cost for the concrete. Plus, we just have to remember that $60 delivery fee. For a grand total of $471.11. And like I said, this represents the total cost for the concrete, not including the labor. But luckily, I have some people that I know that can do this. So I'm really just looking at the cost for the material. So that's actually pretty inexpensive to put a patio in. So the other dilemma, I don't know if you notice in the picture, but the other dilemma is there's no steps anymore. See how that chair is blocking that door? That's so that no one opens the door and goes flying out. The chair's there. So there used to be concrete steps that would go down to this. I used to have this old little slab there, so now we're just making it bigger. So now what we're doing is we need to get some steps. So here's kind of a vision of what some steps can look like. We're going to assume in this picture that this height of each step is the same. So basically that this right here is also 6 inches. This is also 6 inches. This depth. So we're going to assume that the rise and the run here is all the same for these steps. And what we want to do is we want to figure out, well, how much are these going to cost? So we're going to run into the same thing. It's a $60 delivery fee again, because this has to come after the patio has set. And it's $90 per cubic yard. So the costs are the same. Since we're talking about cubic yards, we need volume. And what's also important to notice is now we're dealing with inches here. And luckily, we don't have any feet. We just have inches and yards. So when we do our conversion, we'll just do our conversions from inches right over to yards, right over to cubic yards. So let's go ahead. If we want to find the volume of this, think about this as 3 different rectangular prisms. I see one small rectangular prism here, and then I see another rectangular prism, and then I see this rectangular, the largest rectangular prism. It doesn't matter if you want to break your figure up that way or if you want to break it up vertically. That's fine. It doesn't matter. You're going to get the same volume. You could even add more volume and then subtract off rectangle or rectangular prisms. I think that's a little bit more challenging because you don't see it. It's not already drawn for you, but you could. It doesn't matter. So it's however you want to break it up. So I'm going to choose this way. So the first thing I need to do is find the volume of the steps. So find volume of the steps. And again, this is in cubic inches, and then we'll worry about the conversion after. So for my first volume here, I'm going to just label these. So the volume of figure 1 is going to be length times width times height. It's just a rectangular prism. So the length I'm going to call 10. The height is going to be 6. And the width goes all the way across here. That's going to be that 36. So basically it's going to be 10 times 36 times 6. It does not matter the order that you multiply these in, but that's going to give me 2,160 cubic inches. Then I'm going to find the volume of the second step. So again, length times width times height. My length, I'm going to call this my length. Well, this is 10 plus 10, so I have 20 there. So this dimension here is 20 inches. So 20 inches times the width, we'll say is 36, times that same height. So multiply all of that, we get 4,320 inches cubed. And then lastly, the third step, again, length times width times height, still a rectangular prism. The length of this step is going to be 10 plus the 20. So we're looking at 30 inches times the width of 36 times the height of 6. And I get 6,480 inches cubed. So again, when I'm doing this, I'm making sure that I'm keeping track of my units. That's important here because you want to make sure that you remember these are all cubic inches. So for the total steps, the total volume of the steps, I'm going to add all 3 of these pieces together to get the amount of concrete. So the total is going to be 2,160 plus 4,320 plus 6,480. These are all in cubic inches. So that's going to give me a grand total of 12,960 inches cubed. So that's my total volume in inches cubed. Again, that doesn't help me with finding the cost because the cost is given to me in cubic yards. So now what I'm going to do is I need to do my conversion. So for the conversion to cubic yards, we want to think about the conversion of inches to yards because, again, cubic conversions most people don't know offhand. So think about, well, 1 yard, remember, was 3 feet. So how many inches is that? Well, 36 inches in 3 feet. So 1 yard, that yardstick, is equal to 36 inches. So now when we cube those things, so again, think about this as you're cubing because you want to get cubic. So 1 cubed is 1, yards cubed is yards cubed, 36 cubed. So this you're going to have to probably type in your calculator. I have 46,656 inches cubed. So again, you're not going to know this conversion offhand. It's not very common that you would use this. So that's why if you remember 1 yard is 36 inches, you can easily get the conversion factor that you need for cubic. So now, again, pick a proportion to do your conversion or use your unit analysis where you're going to cancel out. I'm going to do the proportion because I think most people prefer that. So I'm going to say 1 cubic yard is equal to 46,650, oops, I'm erasing, 46,656 cubic inches. That's my rule, my conversion factor. I'm trying to figure out how many yards I have. Over, I know I have 12,960 inches cubed. So now we cross multiply, do some math here. So 46,656x is equal to 12,960. Divide both sides by that 46,000. I get x equals 0.277778 cubic yards. So this is the amount of concrete I need, which it makes perfect sense because remember for the whole patio it was like 4.5 cubic yards. So it makes sense that the steps are significantly less. So now in order to figure out the cost, we're going to do that the exact same way. So the cost, well, it costs $90 times the number of cubic yards, 0.277778. I don't want to round that number because I want it to be as accurate as possible. So for the cost here, I get $25. And when I did this, I used that exact value right from my calculator, plus the $60 for delivery. So it only costs $25 for the material, but then I got to pay $60 to have it delivered. So this is $85. So this is where it might become more practical to actually go buy bags of concrete instead of have it delivered on a truck. Because I don't need that much, and instead of paying $60 delivery fee, it might make more sense to go to Home Depot and actually buy some bags of concrete and mix it versus have a truck come to deliver it. But that just kind of gives you an idea of how this stuff can be used, how we can use volume um, in our everyday life. When we're especially in construction, it's used all the time. So I hope you enjoyed just seeing this example.